It is Wednesday morning here in Vancouver, which means we are continuing 1 year later, the series where we take a look at prospects drafted in 2022 and review their entire progressions from then until now. We've talked a little bit about guys in Buffalo over the past few years. We've made 1 year later videos about Matthew Savoy. That was a pretty good one, I feel. Owen Power, of course, from last year was also there. Jack Quinn also got some love in this series, not to mention our fair share of videos made for guys like Dylan Cousins and JJ Peterka, etc., etc. There's a lot of Sabres young stuff content on this channel, but we are continuing that with 1 year later 2023 edition because as we've already talked about the Sabres' first round pick in 2022, I wanted to talk about today their second pick made in the same first round of the draft. So without further ado, let's head over to the 16th overall pick, which initially belonged to the Vegas Golden Knights, but which was traded over to Buffalo in the Jack Eichel trade. Let's talk today about 16th overall Noah Ostlund, a guy whom I've been a very big fan of the past few years. There are a few reasons as to why Noah Ostlund was so high up on my board in the 2022 draft, but there also was reason to believe that he might have even been a little bit more of a reach at this spot. Noah Ostlund is a 19-year-old, 5'11", 163-pound left-handed center. So while he isn't really the biggest guy, he definitely has a lot of weight to put on if he wants to establish more so of an NHL caliber frame. Nevertheless, he was a 16th overall guy that was projected to go a lot later, actually, by most scouting outlets around this time. Elite Prospects had Ostlund at 27, Future Considerations at 24. Button had him at 30, McKeen's had him at 22, even McKenzie had him at number 22. So the fact that the Sabres took him at number 16 was seen as somewhat of an ambitious pick, but there was a reason behind the madness here. In 21-22, when Ostlund was draft eligible, he played for Djurgårdens in the SHL on their junior 20 team as well as their regular SHL team. Now, playing with the competition in his own age range, he had 42 points in 32 games played, 9 goals, 33 assists, very nice, had 0 points in 11 SHL games, which is okay for a guy who is only 17, 18 years old. You can't expect all of these young guys in this age range to get a bunch of points. And he also suited up for Team Sweden at the U18s, where he had 10 points in 6 games played, 4 goals, 6 assists. Noah Ostlund had himself a really intriguing style of play, and that's highlighted by the scouting reports as posted here on Elite Prospects. At his best, Noah Ostlund is a dynamic, shifty playmaker who takes full advantage of the width of the ice to build passing sequences. He is a dexterous distributor, with a full array of reach-adjusted passes and the keen eye to find options through traffic. He was the most prolific setup man in the entire junior Swedish circuit. You also had a few other scouting reports here saying this: his hockey sense, work ethic, and skill level make him stand out. He makes all of his line mates better, said Michael Holmquist. He has the best hockey sense of all the 2022 draft prospects, a world-class playmaker and a shifty stick handler, as written by Magnus Havlid. EP Ringside said that Noah Ostlund plays with intensity and is always on the move. He has equal parts creativity with a high-end work rate too. Draft in Europe said that Noah Ostlund is a very skilled forward, always reading the play off the puck and putting in the effort to disrupt plays. He has a flawless all-around game. Despite the fact that Noah Ostlund was a little bit smaller, and his numbers in the SHL were literally 0, this is one of the guys who had one of the more astute understandings of how to create offense in the draft. His playmaking, his puck skills, his isolation, and the way he's able to feather passes through was unmatched by most prospects in this selection. Sure, he's a bit small, but there still is a guy here who has such a good understanding of the game that there's a really good profile here for a guy heading into the future. And if you take a look at where things were back then as well, this is the Dobber report on Noah Ostlund from last year: dynamic offensive player with great speed and puck handling ability. He needs to round out his game and get on the inside more consistently, but he has NHL level skill. And so even though he was taken a little bit higher on in the draft than people thought he would be, this was still a very high ceiling type of pickup the Buffalo Sabres executed as a result of that Jack Eichel trade. And if you want to take a look at where things went since then, things look pretty good for Ostlund, all things considered, in 22-23. You see, the Djurgårdens SHL team was not good enough in the qualifications and in the playoffs to stick around in the SHL. They dropped, demoted to the Allsvenskan, which is the second-tier pro league in Sweden. So technically, Noah Ostlund going back to Djurgårdens, he's going to have worse competition to play against, but he's still going to play against men. In this sample, he had 26 points in 37 Allsvenskan games, 8 goals, 18 assists. He also had 5 points in 12 games in the playoffs, which is a pretty good number all things considered for a guy who was 18 for most of the year. He also had the opportunity to suit up for Team Sweden at the regular World Juniors, getting 4 points in 7 games over there. Ostlund exhibited more of the playmaking that made him such a special prospect back when he was drafted, and that's reflected in much of the scouting reports from now. This is the Dauber report written by Kevin Wong on Ostlund in May 2023. Ostlund finished his 23 season in the Allsvenskan with 8 goals and 26 points, which is a successful year for the 18-year-old if not for his subsequent playoff campaign, which was ultimately derailed by injuries. He was 4th amongst regular season scorers for his team, Djurgårdens, but during the playoffs was relegated to the 4th line while he struggled to return to form. Ostlund is a quick, agile playmaker whose game revolves around his distribution and transition abilities. He can shield and protect the puck individually to create offense, but he currently lacks the heaviness and strength in his game. His contributions to his team's forecheck and his possession work down low also need to improve. The 2023 Allsvenskan playoffs have concluded, thus Ostlund is slated to join the Rochester Americans for the remainder of the AHL postseason as a member of their practice roster, although he is not expected to participate in their upcoming matches this spring. Now, when it comes to Ostlund, he actually isn't with Rochester right now. In fact, he got loaned over to the Växjö Lakers in the SHL, so he's no longer playing in Djurgårdens. In fact, the Lakers are playing in the Champions Hockey League right now, which is essentially the Champions League, but for hockey. You kind of understand how that works, right? CHL hockey is going on in Europe, and Noah Ostlund has 2 points, 2 goals in 2 games played. He also scored a pretty nice shootout goal the other day where he was able to dish it out onto the backhand, and this is going to be a really good opportunity for Ostlund in his development because playing with Växjö, if they could really use him more so as a top 6 type of guy rather than relegate him to the 4th line like the Djurgårdens team did in the postseason, who knows where exactly Ostlund can go with his development. The Lakers have some pretty good players at their disposal that Ostlund could probably find some good passing lanes too. Tobias Rieder is on this team, so is Robert Rosen, guys who have been here for a while or guys whose name you probably recognize from their NHL stints. Joachim Blichfield is also here too, which is nice to see, and Dylan McLaughlin is too. So there are a good amount of recognizable names here on this Växjö team that in which Ostlund could hopefully develop some chemistry with and learn how to distribute the puck too. And heading into the upcoming year, I mean, this is the Hockey News, their prospect pool overview for Buffalo. This is what Tony Ferrari wrote about Noah Ostlund back in July of 2023. He's an intelligent center who drives play at almost every level he plays at. He'll be moving on from Djurgårdens to play with Växjö in the SHL, which is a logical next step for the speedy, skilled center. Ostlund and Savoy may have to ultimately move to the wing at the NHL level with Tage, Thompson, and Cousins occupying the main center roles, but having Ostlund as a center on a scoring third line could make the Sabres lethal for years to come. While this guy may not project to be the top-tier center on the Buffalo Sabres as the years go on, considering his ceiling and his own deficiencies with size, not to mention the potential of the guys that are already on Buffalo, this is a guy who, if you get yourselves a middle to top 6 center scorer, a guy who could maybe put up 40 to 45 points a season, that's a pretty good get for a guy you got as extra shrapnel from the Jack Eichel trade. Alex Tuch, Peyton Krebs, Noah Ostlund, there still was another draft pick in there that the Buffalo Sabres were able to accrue, that in which they actually didn't use themselves, but the point remains here. Lots of good stuff coming over from that Eichel trade, and Noah Ostlund is the main prospect that was attached from the first-round pick. So, if you're a fan of the Djurgårdens SHL/Allsvenskan team, if you're a fan of the Växjö Lakers, what have you liked so far out of Noah Ostlund and the way he's developed in your systems? If you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, where do you see Ostlund going in the next few years, and how well do you think he's going to progress as his career goes on? What do you think he accomplishes in 23-24 with Växjö? And by the time the season winds down, and maybe he makes his debut at the Rochester Americans at the end of 23-24, what are your expectations for him then? The AHL is a much rougher league than the SHL is, so I'm intrigued to seeing how a 5'11", 160-pound center is going to fare in that type of environment. But either way, this is a really good name that the Buffalo Sabres have added into their pool, really kind of cementing that idea that they want smaller, skilled guys to complement their big behemoths on their roster. Rasmus Dahlin is pretty decently sized, Owen Power is huge, Tage Thompson is huge, but then you have the Zach Bensons, the Savoys, the Noah Ostlunds out there that are not so big, but play with a lot of skill too. Thoughts in the comment section below about Noah Ostlund and his career so far, how he's developed 1 year after being drafted. I hope you enjoyed this video, and Bye.